There are times you will have to make an outfit ASAP, and pattern making might just be a waste of time. So in this video we are going to learn how to cut an off shoulder with freehand. So if this is something you are interested in, then keep on watching. My name is Olivia and you are welcome to my channel. So first you need to know the length of your half length for both front and back. So my front length, half length is 16.5, whilst my back is 14.5, because our back is usually shorter than the front by 2 inches. Okay, so we'll draft the front first, and I'll draw a straight line on this fabric. I'm doing this on the wrong side of the fabric, and this is the front. So for you to know the amount of fabric to fold, you divide your bust by 4 inches, and then you add an extra 4 inches to the result. Alright, so now you need to know how off you want the outfit to be. So I want 5.5, but I'm going to use 5.25, so that by the time I stitch quarter of an inch, I'll have 5.5. So I'll begin the measurement from 5.25. Alright, so I'll begin from 5.25 and mark my chest line. So my chest is 7.5, so I'll mark that. And then I'll mark my shoulder to nipple, shoulder to under bust, and shoulder to half length, which is 16.5, plus half inch for joining allowance, so 17. So I'll go ahead and mark that across. So I'll name it chest, nipple point, under bust, and then half length. Now I'll divide my nipple to nipple by 2, and then I have 3.5. I'll add half inch for joining allowance because this is not pattern making. Okay, so then I'll have 4 inches. So I'll input that 4 inches just like this. And on the starting line, I'll add 1 inch to that 4 inches. So then I'll have 5 inches. This 1 inch will cover up for the dart intake at that point. So on the nipple line, I'll go up by 1 inch, and then I'll come down by 1 inch. Then I'll go ahead and connect from there to the starting line like this, and then from that 1 inch down like this. So towards the center front, I'll go in by half an inch, and then 1.5 towards the side. I'll do same on the under bust, just like this, and then I'll connect them together with a ruler. And then I'll connect from that 1 inch down to the under bust on both sides. Now on the starting line, I'll take a dart of 2 inches, 1 inch on both sides, and then I'll also connect that to the 1 inch upwards. So that 1 inch up, 1 inch down will help the outfit not to be pointed. So I'll just go ahead and connect with my chalk like this. So this is what we have. So if you want a sweetheart neckline, you come down as you desire, and then from here I'll take the measurement I have here and then measure the same thing on the other side. So I have 4 inches. I'll move the tape like this, so you realize they are not the same, so I'll cover up for that just like this. Then I'll connect from that point to the other like this. Now I'll divide my shoulder measurement into 2 equal parts. I have 7.5. Then I'll deduct 2 inches from that 7.5. So I have 5.5. So I'll go ahead and input that like this. Then I'll replace the dot, 2 inches dot. We will need 1 inch to join both sides together. So I'll add 1 inch to that like this for joining allowance. On the chest point, I'll take quarter of my bust and then I'll replace the dots on the chest point, 2 inches for sewing allowance and then 1 inch for joining allowance. Then on the under bust, I'll take quarter of my under bust measurement. I'll replace the 2 inches dot intake, add 2 inches sewing allowance and then 1 inch for joining allowance. So for the allowance I have about 5 inches. So I'll take quarter of my waist, and then not to waste time, I'll just repeat the same 5 inches like this. Then I'll connect my points together. Alright, so if you want an off shoulder with an armhole, you connect just like I'm doing right now. That is how you connect. But for me, I want my off shoulder to be in the form of a tube. So I'm going to connect just like this. Watch what I'm doing. So that is for a tube blouse, alright? So remember to curve it like I did first if you want an armhole. So then let's move to the back. So the same thing I did on the front, that is what I'll do on the back. The only difference is the back length. My back length is 14.5. That is shoulder to half length. So I'll draw a straight line just like I did for the front. The same 5.25, I'll do the same thing. Shoulder to chest, shoulder to nipple, shoulder to half length, which is 14.5 plus half inch for joining allowance, 15. Now if you want a zipper at the back of your dress, then you include the zipper allowance. So from the center back, which is the center back, right, remember to add zipper allowance if you would need a zipper allowance. I'll mark my nipple to nipple measurement like this, like the way I did for the front. So this line here will help you to join if you want a seam line at your back. But in my case, I do not want any seam line. Okay, so the same 5.5 I took on the front, I'll do the same thing on the back. So if you know you want a seam line at the back, you add 1 inch to that. That means you want your back to be divided into 2. On the chest line, I'll input 1/4 of my bust. Then I'll go ahead and add 2 inches for sewing allowance. If you know you will join, then you add 1 inch for joining allowance. That's the seam line, okay? So on the under bust, I'll do same, add 2 inches allowance. On the waist as well, I'll do the same thing. Then I'll go ahead and connect the point together. So if you want an armhole, like I said earlier, you connect from this point to the chest line like this. But in my case, I want a tube blouse, so that means I'll start from the chest line like this. So that is where the back will start from, okay? Now I also want my back to have a lacing, okay? So from the center back, I'll go in by 1.25. I want 1.5, but because this is a freehand cutting, by the time I stitch, it will be bigger than what I want, so it's better I mark less. So I just deducted 1/4 of an inch, and on the upper part as well, I marked 1.5. So by the time I stitch, it will be like the lower part might just be like 1.5, whilst the upper part will be 1.25 to 2 inches, which is okay. Alright, so I'll go ahead and connect the points together like this. So I'll have my eyelets fixed here like this. So please take note, if you'll be having a seam line at the back or you'll be slashing your back into 2, make sure you add 1 inch for joining allowance to the sides so you don't get shortage, okay? So we need to make sure our back corresponds with our front. So I'll measure my back like this, the side. I have 7.5. I'll measure the same thing like this, and this is 7.5. The rest is 2 inches, which is true. Right, so I'll connect from that 2 inches to this point like this, and then we'll be taking that point off. So by the time you join, the sides will align. Okay, so now I want an illusion at the center of the front. So what I'm going to do now is to take note of my desired width. So I want a width of 2 inches. Okay, so on a fold is 1 inch. So from the center front, I'll mark 1 inch like this. And then on the lower part, I want it to be smaller, so I'll mark 1/2 inch. So I'll take it like this. I'll connect them together. So from that line that I have drawn right now, I'll mark 1/4 of an inch away from that place. And this 1/4 of an inch will serve as joining allowance, that is to join the illusion to the front. So I'll connect those points together as well. So that is going to be a pattern to cut the illusion. Then I'll go ahead and also cut the 2 inches off. Let's cut the illusion. I'll fold the net into 4 equal parts like this, and then 1/2 inch away from the center, which is going to serve as the joining allowance. So make sure you notch all other points so you don't get confused. Just notch like this. So I'll join the front part, taking note of my notches. Then I'll stitch with my 1/2 inch allowance. I'll go ahead and notch. Okay, so I'll add the back. This is the back, right? You will see arrows there. So one side is the front. So I've notched one part of it. That is the center back, so I don't get confused. So the opposite side of that notch part is the side. So I'll join the front to the back. And then you realize I have an excess, so I'll cut that off like this. Okay, so this is it. I'll iron the seam line with my homemade bust ham. I have a tutorial on it, so I'll put the link in the description box so you can check it out. So I cut 2 of the illusion, right? So I've joined the upper part and then I cut the excess off. So I'm going to turn it out like this. Make sure right sides face each other before you sew. So I'll place it on the front. I've notched so that the notches will match each other like this. So the excess at the top after stitching will help turn the neckline with the lining. So I'll do same to the other one. And this is how it looks after stitching. I'll pick one of the linings with right sides facing each other like this. I'll pick it this way and pin them together. And then I'll stitch with 1/4 inch, and afterwards I'll understitch. Alright, so now let's turn the necklines together. So I'll use a pin to indicate where the net stopped. Then I'll turn them right sides facing each other like this. Then I'll pin them together. So I'll go ahead and stitch. So this is after stitching. I'll cut the excess off. I also added hemming gum while stitching so that after notching and everything, when I iron, they will stick together. Alright, so I'll go ahead and notch them, and this is what we have. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, like, subscribe to my channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and then I'll see you in my next one.